Hello and welcome to another episode of Agri-History, Tropical Edition. In this episode, we'll cover 3 types of millet, their domestication history. The species we'll cover will be Euceline coracana, also known as finger millet, Panicum millicum, also known as broom corn millet, and Penicitum glaucum, aka pearl millet. We will start with finger millet. Finger millet is a very important grain crop found in Africa and India. Within those areas, it is used to produce beer, porridge, soup, bread, and cake, as well as puddings. It is also used for making a beverage called arak, spelled A-R-A-K, an alcoholic beverage utilized in Africa and India. There is a lot of controversy when it comes to the origins of this species in terms of domestication. Dr. Ken Dole considered finger millet a crop domesticated in India due to the fact that most species of Euceline are found in the south of Asia, and less of these species are found across the rest of the world. Also the fact that there's a Sanskrit word for finger millet, but no Arabic word. He later on suggested that after being domesticated in India, it was introduced to East Africa and from there into Western Africa. Building upon this, Dr. Greenway concluded that finger millet was domesticated from the weed known as Euceline indica due to the large amount of morphological diversity within the cultivated species and the wild species. Later on, finger millet fossils were found, and they were dated to around 1800 BC, although later archaeological evidence showed that this was not finger millet fossil grains on the basis of morphological evidence. Dr. Porters suggested that finger millet was domesticated independently from 2 different species, one from Africa and one from Asia. These 2 cultivars would eventually be hybridized together to form the current species, while Dr. Mehera suggested that it was only domesticated in Africa, and only the African species is the ancestor. Recent genetic evidence seems to have proven the latter. Now onto broom corn millet. Broom corn millet is amongst the oldest of the domesticated grains. There's been heavy debate on where it was domesticated. Some speculate it was domesticated in Eastern Europe, others say Northern China. And this debate is confounded even further by the finding of broom corn millet domesticated that predates 6000 BP. These samples are found in the northeastern areas of the Yellow River Valley in northeastern China. Several researchers have developed a technique to test the land races to find out what the origin of this cultivated crop is, and comparing that genetic evidence with the hypotheses of a Eurasian origin and a Chinese origin. With new dating processes, as well as genetic techniques, they have found the hypothesis of a Eurasian origin to be untenable. Some of the artifacts found in Eurasia were dated older than they actually were, and there was less diversity within the populations of broom corn millet, was less than was found in China. This once more seems to suggest a Chinese origin of broom corn millet. Based on the current model, the wild ancestor of broom corn millet expanded its range at some point in the last 10,000 to 20,000 years. This was followed by an increase in use of the species by primordial people. Now, as for the actual species it was derived from, the genetic evidence seems to suggest that Penicitum capillare, or a closely related species, is a wild ancestor to our broom corn millet. Given that this species is an allopolyploid, or a species made from the crossbreeding of two other species, there is still the other species in question that's unknown. Afterwards, broom corn millet would have spread throughout China. It would be through these different routes, available to China, to Serbia, and other parts of Eurasia, that would be used to trade and expand the range of domesticated broom corn millet. Well, that covers that crop. Onto the last one, Proso millet. Now on to the domestication of Proso millet. Millet plants are clump-forming plants that have a wild-type dormancy but have great storage capabilities. Based on current evidence, pearl millet was probably domesticated between 2500 BC and 2000 BC in the lower Tensmi Valley in eastern Mali. Like most other grains, the traits that would be selected for would be non-shattering traits. Since the earliest known samples of non-shattering seed heads of pearl millet were found in 2000 BC, and based on the general trajectory of Neolithic time frames of domestication, it is likely that cultivation of pearl millet began at around 4000 BC. The presence of fully domesticated pearl millet were found by 1700 BC, based on pottery which contains chaff of pearl millet. From there, it is likely that pearl millet spread southward, and eventually to the east, to the most northwestern part of the subcontinent of India, in the area between Indus Valley and the Saharata Peninsula. This likely happened between 1900 BC and 1700 BC. The Indian strains have a smaller grain than the African strain, indicating a genetic divergence. This dissemination process would have gone through the regions of Niger, Chad, and finally the Sudan, if this was the case, and there's weak evidence to suggest this route. Researchers have found impressions of Pennisetum species, both with domesticated traits and wild traits. There also seems to be evidence of maritime trade between the Red and Arabian Seas. This route also explains the origins of African crops in Asia, such as sorghum and hyacinth bean, which arrived in India in ancient times. This may indicate Neolithic trading going on between Asia and Africa sometime in ancient history during the Holocene era. Well, this concludes our video on millet domestication. Thank you for watching and stay lit, fam.